this is that classic you guys all love, huh? This is that movie that people think is so amazing that an entire religion had to be made around it. I'm sorry, but I thought you people had more standards than that. I guess screw me, right? So, as you guys know, we are on the cusp of the release of the new Crow movie, so in build up to that, I am watching all the Crow movies that have come out before for the very first time, starting with the original. And this one was a crushing disappointment. After all that hype, after all that praise I've been hearing for so many damn years about this movie, when I finally saw it, I was bored. I know that this is probably going to get me crucified on the internet, but it's my opinion, and I built my channel on honesty. So it looks like it's time to piss off the internet again, as if I haven't done it already a million times over. Look, if you enjoy this movie, I understand. I don't agree with you, but I understand. But if you are going to attack me for my opinion when I say that I respect yours, you're just being a toxic gatekeeping asshole, and I have no tolerance for that. So please be respectful in my opinion, and I'll be respectful of your opinion, okay? Let's get this over with, because I've already made a lot of people upset. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, register for anything animation, including TV and movies. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Excuse me, I had a burp in my throat. Let's talk about The Crow, 1994, the original movie starring Brandon Lee, who, as we all know, died on set by a defective gun blank. Yeah. You know the story. Yes, I've known about this movie for a while, but I've never watched it. It's not that I didn't want to, it's that I simply didn't have the time to. And after hearing all the praise for years from the die-hard fans, this year I finally caved, because we have a brand new one coming that a lot of people are crapping on, but I personally think looks great. Yes, fight me. So because of that, now is the time to finally look over all these Crow movies and see if they're really worth building an entire religion around like some people have done. So I have a pretty lengthy written review for this one. All I can say is I hope you enjoy. And please be respectful in my opinion. It's just subjective. It's not objective, it's subjective. Just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. Just don't be an asshole, okay? That's all I ask of you. Let's begin. Let me make some things very clear before I start proper. 1. While I'm familiar with the name and premise of this series as well as its roots in comic books, I have never watched any of these before. My knowledge only goes as far publicly as the known information that's already out there, and a grave mistake by Ice Nine Kills being inspired by it. So this is coming from the perspective of a newcomer, and I'm reviewing it as a movie, not a Grail from Valhalla. 2. I'm fully aware of what happened to Brandon Lee, and I agree that it was absolutely tragic that he was taken away from the world way too soon. Rest in peace, you did not deserve the fate that you got, man. But I refuse to let my condolences and my sympathy for that accident completely judge my opinion. Thus, I reiterate, reviewing it as a movie. 3. And probably most importantly, I know that this is a comic book movie, but I don't know much about said source material outside of a few pictures I've seen online, and that it has more than one Crow. So to keep it fair, I'm reviewing it on the grounds of how it works as a stand-alone project. I'm not making any references to the comics, I'm not going to see how it ties into the comics or yada yada yada, because I am unfamiliar with the source material. Okay? Keep that in mind before you jump down my throat. Now with all that said, let's begin the review properly, shall we? I went into this with my expectations kind of in the middle. Not because I thought it'd be bad, but because of how much it's been overpraised for the past decade, and also being aware of the toxic gatekeepers who refuse to accept anything else besides this original movie. Like, these gatekeepers, they worship the movie like it's a religion. and they will immediately denounce anything that's not this movie. They denounce the sequels, and they even denounce the comic books to an extent. In other words, they're one-minded and pathetic. So with all that said, and even giving it the fairest of chances possible, I did not like this movie. Let me repeat that. I did not like this movie. I did not. It has its moments, but in all honesty, it's one of the most boring comic book movies I've seen in a while. Yes, Madam Web included. Pros. Brandon is good as Eric Draven. His performance is very good. He fits the character. He does a very good job, especially in the physicality department. The Crow's design is unique. It is simple, black t-shirt, black jeans, clown makeup, but it works. And it's a very unique design. I think it actually works for what they're trying to do here. The action's passable. There was some good action in this movie. I do like the final battle on top of the cathedral, where it pretty much turns into a glorified sword fight. It's cool. It's not like the greatest things I've ever seen in a comic book movie, but it's cool. The practical effects and the gore are by far its best aspect. It does take a while to actually justify its R rating, but there is a lot of blood, a lot of gore, and a lot of death. Including, but not limited to, severed eyeballs, holes through hands, what's another one? Oh, and a lot of skewering. Like, a lot of stabbing and a lot of skewering. Like, this movie does not hold back in the blood and gore department, and the practical effects are great here. Absolutely. By far the best part of the movie. The final act is okay. I do like the final act of the movie. It's fine. It works. It does feel somewhat satisfying, and again, the battle in the cathedral highlighted the film in my opinion. And it has pretty nice cinematography that does a good job making it look like a comic book. Yeah, I definitely still stand by that. The cinematography does a good job being like a dark, gritty comic book. It's no Watchmen, but it works, and it makes it still feel like it belongs in the comic book world. Now let's talk about everything else that it's so freaking horribly failed at. The rest of the characters are flat. Like, if you're not Eric Draven, you're boring. Even Ernie Hudson as the main police guy, boring. Extremely, extremely boring. The kid was boring, the other characters were boring, the villain was boring, his lackeys were boring. All the characters in this movie, aside from Draven himself, are boring. Writing is unimpressive. It just feels like generic comic book writing. Like, no flair or anything. It's just dark and edgy for the sake of being dark and edgy. And it just feels cringy in a few spots, to be honest with you. The rest of the acting is hit or miss. Some are okay. Like Ernie Hudson as the police chief, I think the character is boring, the acting is still good. But then you have people like some of the villains who are terrible, even by comic book movie standards. Rewatchability is low. I'm never watching this again. I have no desire to watch this again after this review. The pacing is tedious. Like, I just watched Alien Romulus. I saw how a slow burn can be done well. This is not that. This is that kind of slow burn that's tedious and just takes its time for the sake of taking time. Music is terrible. I'm sorry. This movie's music, outside of maybe the gothic choir in the beginning and the weird techno music in the final battle, the rest of the music in this movie's terrible. Licensed songs included. Villain's crap. Villain is terrible in this movie. The main bad guy, while he does a good job showing how intimidating he is, he doesn't act intimidating as he should. crap villain. The green screen effects are laughably bad. Like, I get this was a movie from 1994, and I get that it wasn't like a big budget movie, it was probably like an indie movie or something like that. But here is my rebuttal. 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out 3 years earlier, had amazing effects, despite also having a low budget, and didn't rely on a green screen outside of a few little scenes here and there. This has an obnoxious, overused amount of green screen, and when you see that green screen, it looks horrible. Like, the whole jumping out the window scenes, all those are green screen, they look bad. Freaking the ending scene with the crow flying over the city, you can see like the white lines around the freaking thing, really showing you how fake it looks. Like, the green screen effects in this movie, for lack of a better term, are shit. People love to crap on like Spy Kids 3D for bad green screen. This is some of the worst green screen I've ever seen. It is awful. The green screen effects in this movie are awful. And for the majority of its duration, it is just plain boring. And no, it's not just because it's an adult story. No. Like, I just reviewed Watchmen Chapter 1 not too long ago. Another movie based on an adult comic book. But that was genuinely engaging and had me gripped from start to finish. And that was only one part of a full story. This is supposed to be a standalone movie, and it doesn't have any of that intrigue. It doesn't have any of that engagement. It's just boring for a grand majority of it. And for the first half hour of this movie, I was debating just quitting it entirely. But no, I stuck through it. But it did not at all feel worth it until the very, very end. Look, I know a lot of people love this movie, and please continue to love it if you continue to love it. Me personally, I just don't like it. Sorry. Overall, I gotta say that I'm not impressed, and it baffles me how this painfully average snooze fest became some people's religion. If you enjoy it, more power to you, but personally, I'm never watching this one again, and I am very disappointed, after all that hype, that this is what I got. Add on the technical difficulties I had just trying to watch the damn thing, because, Prime's site is apparently having issues because I had to reload the page 6 freaking times before it worked. And it's just all around a miserable experience that I never want to go through again. And if this is the best that this franchise has to offer, it makes me revile in horror about what the sequels have in store for me in the next coming days. Pray for my sanity. So, overall, in my opinion, this movie is just not good. It has its moments. I can see what they were trying to do. But it is not good. Maybe I'm not the target demographic. I don't know. But having watched a good bit of comic book movies and even a lot of adult comic book stuff lately, I see right through this. This was just a miserable experience from start to finish. And while it may not technically be bad from the score I'm going to give it, in my opinion, it's just one of those movies I never want to rewatch again. It was tedious, it was slow, it was agonizing, it was boring, and it barely had anything good in it. Brandon single-handedly carried this movie, because I bet you if they got anybody else to play this character, it would have been 10 times worse. I hate to say it, but that's just the reality of the situation. In my opinion, this movie is, for lack of a better term, and I apologize to Brandon in advance, crap. In my opinion, this movie is crap. And I will never understand the people that actually made this into like a full-on religion. Like putting it on a pedestal, worshiping it like it's some kind of holy grail. It's not. It is a painfully average snooze fest that probably would not have gotten famous in the first place if it wasn't for Brandon and what happened to him. That's just the reality of this situation. Maybe it was better back then by those standards, but in my opinion, even as someone who loves old movies, this was a pain in the ass to sit through. And I'm just left bitterly disappointed. Is it the worst movie I've ever seen? Oh, absolutely not. I've seen far worse things. But compared to what I was led to believe it is, yeah, I'm disappointed to say the least. So, let's get to my final verdict for The Crow, 1994. It's probably the lowest score you're going to see from anybody give this movie on the internet. But it is pure, brutal honesty. It is my personal opinion. You're free to disagree as long as you're not a douche in my comments. So, with that said, my final verdict for The Crow, 1994, is a soul-crushing, shattering, disappointing, harsh, but brutally honest 4 out of 10. It is a 4. It is below average. It is boring as hell. And if it weren't for Brandon himself being as good as he is, and if it weren't for the practical effects, this probably would have been a 3 or even a 2. Because everything else surrounding this movie is absolutely tedious in every single way, shape, and form. If you already know you love this movie, please continue to love it. But for those of you that are curious, in my opinion, skip it, but you're free to make your own judgment call. In my opinion, this is one corpse that should have just remained buried. I hate to say it, but honestly, I hope that the new one is leagues better than this, because this was a huge, bitter disappointment. But before we get to that new one, we have to go through the other sequels first, the ones that even the Crow fans refuse to talk about because they just outright think it's bad. Not saying that they're wrong, they're probably right, but maybe it's for more interesting reasons than this. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll tell you all about next time when we dive into the first of these sequels with The Crow, City of Angels. City of Angels. Sorry, I forgot. Don't use Angry Nerds vocabulary. My bad. See you next time for City of Angels, so we can see how bad it really is.
We cannot take it anymore. The time has come to cancel. Put your head, finally ready for this. I really hope that I'm ready.